Time Walk with me.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Time Walk with me. I am the Time Walker, and I've been busy with a lot of stuff, including getting a new job, so this deck is long overdue. The commander is Lilah, Undefeated Slickshot. She is a 3/3 human rogue who costs 1 generic, 1 blue, and 1 red mana to cast. She has prowess, which means she gets +1/+1 until end of turn whenever you cast a non-creature spell, and when that creature is a multicolored instant or sorcery and you cast it from your hand, then instead of going to the graveyard, it gets exiled and plotted. A spell that is plotted can be cast on a later turn as a sorcery without paying its mana cost. So this deck is full of instants, sorceries, and stuff that takes advantage of instants and sorceries. Of course, I'm limited to sorceries that are both blue and red, but there's a good number of those. Arcane Infusion. Beacon Bolt. This deals damage to a creature equal to the number of instants and sorcery cards that you own in exile and in your graveyard, so it counts the plotted cards. Call the Skybreaker. Late in the game with Lilah out, this spell gets you 2 5/5 flyers for 7 mana and turns the land cards in your hand into copies of it. Retracing it won't trigger Lilah's ability, but oh well. Creative Outburst. This is another late game spell that's nice to cast for free after you've cast it once. Cunning Strike. As an editor, the comma in the flavor text of this card bugs me. It should not be there. Otherwise, it's a fine spell, especially since it cantrips. It's nice to draw a card for free. Electrolyze. This is the quintessential blue and red spell. It deals damage and it draws you a card. Elemental Masterpiece. Like Creative Outburst, this spell gives you the option to pay some mana and discard it to get a treasure token. This makes them both handy in the early game or in the late game. Elemental Summoning. Experimental Overload. This is good after you've used up your plotted spells and they're just sitting there in your graveyard. Expressive Iteration. This basically makes you draw 2 cards, though you have to play one of them this turn. Flame of Honor, or Anor? I think it's Honor. There are a few wizards in this deck, so there's a chance you'll get to choose 2 of these modes, but even just one of them is pretty good, especially since you'll be able to cast it for free the second time. You can even wait until you have a wizard once it's plotted. Galvanic Iteration. When this is plotted, you'll only be able to cast it as a sorcery, but it still works that way. Gandalf Sanction. This wants you to have a lot of instants and sorceries in your graveyard, and it only targets a creature, but if you want to hurt a player, you can target a creature with low toughness and deal the excess damage to its controller. Hypothesizzle. This makes you draw and it deals damage to a creature. Very is it. Invert/invent. Double-sided spells are only the colors of the half that you cast, but the halves of this card are both blue and red. And I think that when you cast it after it's plotted, you can choose which half to cast for free. Izzet Charm. Practical Research. This wants to make you discard an instant or sorcery card, but some cards in this deck like instants and sorceries being in the graveyard, so it works out fine. Prismari Command. This lets you choose 2 among 4 nice options. Prophetic Bolt. Unlike many of the other burn spells in this deck, this one can target a player. Then you get to select 2 among the top 4 cards of your library. Rouse Outburst. This one can also target a player and gives you selection, though you have to put one of them into your graveyard. Schismotivate. This can flip the result of a combat interaction around. It's a great combat trick, and once you can only cast it as a sorcery, it can help you on the attack. Slick Sequence. It's very easy to take full advantage of this spell by making sure it's not the first one you've cast in a turn. Sonic Assault. This temporarily gets a creature out of the way and hurts its controller a little. Stitch in Time. This could potentially give you 2 extra turns, or if you lose the first coin flip, you get another try next turn. There are no other multicolored instants or sorceries in the game that give you extra turns, so this really is a nice card for this commander. Teach by example. Like Galvanic Iteration, this can copy an instant or sorcery even if you cast it as a sorcery. It doesn't have flashback, unfortunately, but you can still cast it twice, so that's good. And Winterflame. Goblin Electromancer. This guy is better than a ramp spell, making your instants and sorceries cheaper. Johann, Apprentice Sorcerer. This guy expands your hand and lets you see what you're drawing next. Lord Dracus. This dude returns an instant or sorcery from your graveyard so you can cast them 2 more times. Maelstrom Muse. This Djinn wizard has flying, so there's a good chance it'll get an attack through on somebody and make your next instant or sorcery cheaper. Nivix Cyclops. If you saved up your plotted spells, this guy could end up quite big. Octavia Living Thesis. This guy will turn all your creatures into 8/8s and win you the game. Prismari Apprentice. Magecraft is nice, and I made sure to take advantage of it in this deck. In fact, just now as I'm writing the script, I made a few changes to include more Magecraft creatures. Serum Core Chimera. This helps you to draw cards, and if you want, it can turn a card in your hand into a lightning bolt that can target a creature or planeswalker. Spectacle Mage. Sprite Dragon. Storm Skrillex. This guy makes your instants and sorceries cheaper and gets bigger when you cast them. Stormcatch Mentor. Stormkiln Artist. This guy is awesome. He gives you a treasure whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, including when you cast them for free because they're plotted. Tempest Angler. Third Path Iconoclast. This guy gives you soldiers when you cast a non-creature spell, not just instants and sorceries. Umara Mystic. Uvilda Dean of Perfection / Nasari Dean of Expression. I bought this card before I had a specific plan for it, though Nasari kinda looks like it might make a good commander. It's here for the Nasari side, which steals spells from your opponents at the beginning of your upkeep. It also gets bigger when you cast a spell from exile, which you'll be doing with all your plotted spells. Varen, Voice of Duality. This Ifrit wizard enhances the Magecraft abilities of all your creatures, including Varen herself. She gets +2/+2 until end of turn whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery. And Zephi, Thunder Conductor. Originally called Zephi Thunder Collector, this human shaman will go off like crazy when you let loose with all the plotted spells at your disposal. With all the spells that are plotted being free to cast, you'll see some high storm counts, so these cards take advantage of that. Brain Freeze. Make sure this will actually hurt whoever you cast it on. Some people like to be milled. Empty the Warrens. Grape Shot. And Mind's Desire. Fire/Ice. I originally put this here thinking it was multicolored, but once you cast it, it isn't, so it's just here because it's cool. Mystic Retrieval. This isn't a multicolored spell, but it can get 2 of them back to your hand from the graveyard. Quicksilver Dagger. This is a very underappreciated card. It turns a creature into a Timmy that also draws you a card when it's activated. I'm surprised it's a common. And Thousand Year Storm. This copies your instants and sorceries, including plotted ones, so it can really do well with Magecraft creatures. We got Alloy Mirror, Arcane Signet, Commander Sphere, Felwar Stone, Fire Diamond, Firemind Vessel, Hedron Archive, Midnight Clock, Ornithopter of Paradise, Sky Diamond, and Urgolem's Eye. Pretty much any 10 or 11, mana rocks and dorks that can do red and blue will do for this. I didn't put too much thought into it. I didn't really put much thought into the lands in this deck. It probably does fine with just mountains and islands, but you could throw in some fancier stuff if you have it. And that's it! That's my Lilah Undefeated Slickshot deck. Give me your tactful thoughts and opinions in the comment section, and remember, the longer Donald Trump is allowed to remain president, the worse of a country the United States will become.